The morning after the siege was heavy with frost and uneasy silence. Frosthaven's streets were littered with debris, shattered carts, broken gates, the bodies of the fallen. Smoke lingered in the alleys, curling like silent accusations, and the city's people moved as if caught in a fever dream, unsure whether to cheer or flee. Inside the council chamber, the tension was almost tangible. Lords and ladies sat stiffly, their faces pale with fear and doubt. The echoes of Kaelor's dark storm still haunted the walls, and whispers of betrayal spread faster than the snow outside. Rohan entered, the shard pulsing faintly beneath his armor, its presence a constant reminder that the Iceborn's power came at a cost. Reports, the High Elder began, voice strained. The northern gate must be rebuilt. Several key supply lines are compromised. And, there are rumors that some of the council's own have vanished during the chaos. Rohan's eyes scanned the assembly, noting the nervous glances, the shifting of weight, the silent accusations. "And you waited until now to speak?" he said sharply. "Do you want Frosthaven to crumble while we debate?" Lady Eris rose, her furs rustling. "We are not blind, Lord Iceborn. But even men with courage falter when the enemy wields magic that can freeze flesh in an instant. Kaelor's influence is still here. Do you know what he can do? He bends loyalty with whispers, fear with a glance. And yet you call us indecisive." Rohan's hands clenched. "I call it necessary caution. Because without caution, we fall. But hesitation will not save us either." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some nodded, others frowned. The council was fractured, and Rohan could see the outlines of a deeper problem. Kaelor had not merely attacked the city with frost and shadow. He had sown seeds of distrust among those meant to defend it. The High Chancellor leaned forward, voice low. "There is talk of a faction among us, those who think your power is too dangerous to be trusted. They will act, sooner or later. You must be prepared." Rohan's jaw tightened. "I expected this. Every step I take, they question. Every victory I earn, they fear. And Kaelor knows it. He counts on it." Aelin, standing close behind him, placed a hand on his arm. Her silver eyes met his. "Then we turn the fear into resolve. Show them what loyalty truly means. Strength without trust is hollow, but trust without strength, that is death waiting." Outside, the wind rattled the frozen banners, carrying whispers from the city streets. Citizens spoke of the Iceborn, their savior, their terror. Some prayed for protection, some plotted for his fall. Every ear that heard his name carried a spark of hope, or a spark of fear. Rohan's gaze fell on the council members again, noting their subtle shifts. One of them, a quiet man named Lord Theron, avoided eye contact entirely. Another, Lady Maris, kept her hands folded tightly, her lips pressed in a thin line. He knew Kaelor's agents were already at work, bending minds before bodies, turning friend against friend. He spoke, voice steady. "I will root out the traitors. Not with sword alone, but with every tool at my disposal. Every whisper of deceit will be met with truth. Every shadow in this council will be revealed." The room grew tense, some leaning forward in anticipation, others recoiling in fear. No one spoke for a long moment. Then the High Elder nodded slowly. "You may act, Lord Iceborn. But remember, in seeking traitors, you may also reveal enemies you did not expect, including within yourself." Rohan's hands tightened around the hilt of his sword. He could feel the shard pulsing in response, urging action, feeding from tension and resolve alike. He had survived Kaelor's siege, but now the war moved to halls of whispered schemes and polished floors. As the council deliberated, Rohan slipped from the chamber, heading for the northern gates, where repairs and patrols awaited. Aelin followed, silent and unyielding, her presence a shield against both doubt and shadow. The city outside felt alive with quiet danger. Frost-laden streets seemed to shift, hiding eyes that watched. Every corner might conceal Kaelor's agents, or worse, traitors waiting to act at the first misstep. The Iceborn's power gave him advantage, but it also made him a beacon, a target for schemes more insidious than any frost or blade. Rohan's voice broke the silence as he addressed Aelin. "Kaelor will strike again, not with storms or shadow, but with minds and hearts. We fight on one battlefield, but there is another, one I cannot see entirely. One I must prepare for, even if it costs me everything." Aelin nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Then we fight it together. Frosthaven's soul is not yours alone, but neither will it fall without you." And as they walked through the streets toward the northern gate, the shard in Rohan's chest pulsed brighter, as if sensing the currents of loyalty and treachery weaving through the city. Outside, snow fell silently, but beneath it, the fractures of the council were deepening, ready to split open at Kaelor's command. At the gates, the first sign of betrayal appeared. A sentry frozen mid-step, eyes wide with shock, yet untouched by frost. The shard throbbed violently. Rohan knew, with a cold certainty, that Kaelor's hand had already reached into the city, and into the council itself. The war was no longer only about Frosthaven's walls. It was about every mind, every oath, every secret buried in shadow. And Rohan Iceborn would have to navigate it all, or lose everything. The northern gate was a frenzy of motion. Carpenters hammered wood into splintered frames, blacksmiths reforged shattered iron, and soldiers drilled into formation under Rohan's sharp orders. Yet despite the flurry of activity, a subtle tension hung in the air, invisible but palpable. Every glance felt measured, every footstep watched. Frosthaven was alive, but its heart beat in fear. Rohan walked the line, inspecting barricades and encouraging soldiers. His own strength had returned after days of feeding the shard, but its pulse reminded him of Kaelor's lurking presence. Every swing of his sword, every command issued, was shadowed by the knowledge that the sorcerer's influence could strike unseen. A young captain, pale and trembling, approached him. "Lord Iceborn, there's been unusual activity in the East Tower." Guards report whispers, but no one sees who speaks. Rohan's eyes narrowed. Whispers are Kaelor's weapon. They travel faster than steel. Prepare a squad and investigate quietly. No alarm. If he is here, we must not give him the advantage of panic. The captain hesitated, then nodded, retreating with a group of wary soldiers. Rohan turned to Aelin. "This is what I feared. He does not attack with frost alone. He poisons trust, bending fear into obedience." Aelin's hand rested briefly on the shard embedded in Rohan's chest. "Then we must be sharper than the fear. Observe every action. Read between every line. Kaelor may know our strength, but he cannot know our unity if we refuse to show it." Hours passed in methodical tension. Repairs continued, patrols doubled, and Rohan moved among his people as both lord and sentinel. Frosthaven's walls were fortified, but the fractures inside the council grew wider with each passing hour. By mid-afternoon, the young captain returned, sweat and fear etched into his face. "Lord Iceborn, it's worse than we thought. East Tower sentries report the disappearance of Lady Maris and Lord Theron. They were last seen entering the lower council archives. Now, they're gone. The doors are locked from the inside, and no one answers." Rohan's jaw tightened. Kaelor's touch. His eyes swept the northern wall and then the city beyond. "He manipulates those in the shadows, turning allies into tools. We will retrieve them, but be prepared for resistance of a kind we have not faced before." Aelin's silver eyes flicked with worry. Could they be compromised? His agents may already have bound them with curses we cannot yet perceive. Rohan's fingers brushed the hilt of his sword. Perhaps, or perhaps they flee, seeking to escape the shadow. Either way, we will find them. He called for a small, trusted contingent. The captain, 2 soldiers, and Aelin. Together, they approached the locked archive, the heavy door scarred and weathered. The cold wind seeped through the cracks, carrying a faint whisper that seemed to echo within the shard itself. Rohan pressed his hand against the door. The shard pulsed sharply, almost violently, as if warning him. He felt a tremor of power in his chest, Kaelor's influence brushing against his own. His jaw tightened, and he whispered, "This ends now." With a sudden, forceful push, the door yielded. Inside, the archives were eerily silent, the air thick with frost and dust. Papers and scrolls lay scattered, some singed, some frozen mid-fall. And in the center, standing unnaturally still, were Lady Maris and Lord Theron. Their eyes glowed faintly, pupils white with a frozen light. Kaelor's mark. Rohan stepped forward, the shard pulsing hotter against his chest. "Release them," he commanded, voice echoing through the hall. Frost curled from the tip of his sword, spiraling along the floor and walls. The 2 council members remained unmoved, their heads tilting slightly, as if listening to a voice only they could hear. Aelin's hand went to her dagger. "Be careful. They are not themselves." Suddenly, the shard flared, releasing a shockwave of frost that knocked everyone back. Lady Maris and Lord Theron stumbled but did not fall, their forms rigid, controlled. Rohan realized the depth of Kaelor's cunning. The sorcerer did not need to strike openly, he had turned allies into puppets who could sow fear and division at the council's heart. Rohan clenched his teeth. Kaelor, you will regret this. His hands gripped the sword, frost crawling along the edge. Every heartbeat of the shard felt like a drum of war, echoing Kaelor's mockery yet giving him strength. Aelin stepped beside him, her silver eyes sharp. We cannot fight them as they are. We need a way to break the bond without harming them. Rohan nodded. Then we find the source. Kaelor's tether runs through the shard. If we can trace it, perhaps we can sever it, but it will take everything I have. As they advanced, the two council members suddenly turned, moving in unison toward the door. Their steps were mechanical, precise, and unyielding, forcing Rohan and Aelin to draw back. The shard pulsed again, sending a surge of frost across the floor. Rohan's lips tightened. The first battle was won, but the real war, the one against Kaelor's influence, had begun. He realized that Frosthaven itself, and the council he served, were now fields of war. Not of swords or siege engines, but of trust, loyalty, and unseen chains. And as the door slammed behind the thronging cold, a single whisper echoed in his mind. You cannot save them all, Iceborn, and every choice binds you closer to me. Rohan's eyes glowed with resolve and fear in equal measure. Kaelor's hand was everywhere, but Iceborn would not bow, yet. The corridors of the lower archives were empty, save for the echo of their footsteps and the subtle hiss of frost curling across the stone. Rohan led, the shard pulsing against his chest like a heartbeat tethered to his own. Aelin followed closely, her eyes scanning every shadow. The young captain trailed behind, sword drawn, jaw tight with tension. The frost that crept along the floor and walls felt unnatural, deliberate. It whispered, faint and mocking, brushing against the edges of consciousness, taunting Rohan with every step. Kaelor's hand was here, present in the air itself, in the silence between the stones. Rohan paused at the base of a narrow spiral staircase leading deeper into the archives. They're being drawn to something below, he said, voice low. The sorcerer's tether runs deep. Follow me quietly. No alarms. Every step counts. The group descended, stone steps slick with frost. Each footfall echoed like a drumbeat, carrying the weight of unseen eyes. As they reached the bottom, the chamber opened into a vaulted hall lined with towering shelves of ancient tomes and relics. The temperature had dropped, breath crystallizing in the air, and the shard in Rohan's chest pulsed violently. Lady Maris and Lord Theron stood at the far end, motionless. Between them, a low pedestal glowed with an eerie blue light, the unmistakable aura of Kaelor's magic. It was a conduit, drawing the council members into his will. Rohan's grip tightened on his sword. Stay behind me, he instructed Aelin. This is Kaelor's web. One misstep, and we're caught. The frost on the pedestal writhed, forming tendrils that snaked toward the two council members. Each tendril wrapped around their wrists and necks, lifting them slightly, as though they were puppets dangling from invisible strings. Rohan felt a surge of rage and fear. This was no longer just about saving lives. It was about stopping a master manipulator before he could claim more. Aelin's silver eyes met his. You cannot fight him with sword alone. The shard, use it, but carefully. Trace the tether, sever it without breaking them. Rohan's pulse quickened. He reached deep into the shard's magic, feeling its icy essence ripple through his veins. He extended his hand toward the pedestal, letting the shard's power flow outward in a concentrated beam of frost. The tendrils shrieked, recoiling slightly, but the pedestal pulsed, resistant, alive with Kaelor's influence. The two council members trembled violently, struggling against the invisible chains. Their eyes flicked toward Rohan, as if silently pleading, yet Kaelor's voice, low and whispering, resonated in their minds. Do not resist, you belong to me. Rohan's hands shook as he poured more energy from the shard. He felt the frost biting at his soul, testing his will, probing for weakness. He forced himself to focus, centering on the council members, on the bond he needed to sever. Each heartbeat of the shard resonated with Kaelor's mocking rhythm, but Rohan's resolve burned brighter. Suddenly, the pedestal cracked, a jagged fissure running along its surface. The tendrils writhed violently, and the council members fell forward, freed from their rigid stance. They gasped, drawing their first true breaths in hours. The shard dimmed slightly, exhausted but still alive, pulsing like a coiled serpent in Rohan's chest. Aelin rushed forward to steady them. "Are you both all right?" she asked, concern etched on her face. Lady Maris nodded weakly, Lord Theron's hands trembling as he straightened. Rohan's eyes never left the pedestal. The frost was receding, but he knew it was only a temporary victory. Kaelor had been thwarted here, yes, but the sorcerer's influence stretched far beyond this chamber. And the shard had tasted the sorcerer's essence, it would remember. A low, chilling laugh reverberated through the hall, not in the room but inside Rohan's mind. Kaelor. The sound was distant, omnipresent, and yet intimate, like a shadow whispering secrets into his very bones. "You may have won this battle, Iceborn," Kaelor's voice hissed, "but the war is far from over. Every choice you make, every life you touch, strengthens the chain that binds you. And soon, you will not know where you end, and I begin." Rohan's jaw tightened. "I will find you, Kaelor. I will end this before Frosthaven falls into ruin." The council members glanced at him, their fear mingling with gratitude. They had been saved, yes, but they now knew the depth of the sorcerer's power and the danger their city faced. Aelin's hand rested briefly on Rohan's arm. "We've bought time," she said. "But the shadow of Kaelor stretches farther than Frosthaven. We must prepare, politically, militarily, and magically. He will strike again, and next time, he may not be so merciful." Rohan nodded, the shard's pulse echoing his resolve. Frosthaven had been spared today, but the fractures within the council, the fears seeded by Kaelor, were far from healed. The Iceborn knew that every victory came with a price, and the next confrontation would demand more than strength alone. It would demand cunning, endurance, and the will to defy a sorcerer who could manipulate hearts and minds as easily as frost. And somewhere beyond the city walls, Kaelor smiled, knowing the game had only just begun. The early dawn over Frosthaven brought no warmth. Mist clung to the ramparts, curling through arrow slits and stairways like ghostly fingers. The city slept fitfully beneath a blanket of frost, unaware that its walls had already been tested, and nearly broken, from within. Rohan walked silently along the battlements, the shard in his chest still faintly pulsing from the night's confrontation. Each pulse was a reminder. Kaelor was not yet defeated, only delayed. Aelin joined him, cloaked against the cold. "The council members are shaken," she said, voice low. "But their loyalty is fractured. Fear spreads faster than frost." Rohan's jaw tightened. "They must trust me again, or at least, believe in the Iceborn. If Kaelor poisons their minds, he doesn't need armies. Division is his weapon." The horizon shivered with the first light, and Rohan's gaze caught movement beyond the northern gate. Riders, fast, disciplined, and not Frosthaven soldiers, were approaching the walls. Their banners were strange, black against gray, an unfamiliar sigil carved into iron and bone. "Scouts," Rohan said sharply, drawing his sword. "Who sends them?" Aelin's eyes narrowed. "I do not recognize their colors. But they are not raiders. They move with discipline, coordination, almost like a small army under one command." By the time the riders reached the outer courtyard, Rohan and his guards had formed a line. The intruders halted, and a single figure dismounted, removing a hood. A young woman stepped forward, her cloak deep crimson, embroidered with silver runes that glimmered even in the pale dawn. Her gaze was unwavering. "I am Lysera," she declared, voice clear and commanding. "I come with a warning, and an offer." Rohan's brow furrowed. "Speak quickly. Frosthaven has no time for riddles." "The sorcerer Kaelor has not only tethered himself to your shard," Lysera said, her eyes scanning the battlements as though expecting ghosts, "but he has allies. I am one of them he betrayed. He seeks more than dominion over your city. He intends to bind the entire north under his shadow. His reach extends beyond what you imagine, Iceborn." Rohan's hands tightened on his sword hilt. "Then you are here to help, or to join him?" Lysera's gaze did not waver. "I broke with Kaelor when I realized his ambitions would devour everyone. I bring knowledge, Iceborn. Allies who are willing to fight in the dark corners he inhabits. But trust is scarce, and danger abundant. We must move swiftly." Aelin's hand rested lightly on Rohan's shoulder. "If she speaks truth, we cannot face Kaelor alone. But how do we know she is not another shadow in his game?" Lysera's expression hardened. "Because I have already walked through fire and frost, and survived his tests. And because the bond he seeks to forge through your shard, I can help sever it before it consumes you entirely. Rohan studied her carefully. The shard pulsed against his chest, an almost insistent rhythm. He could feel Kaelor's gaze through it, faint but distinct. Any misstep now could be fatal, not only to him, but to the city, and everyone he swore to protect. Very well, Rohan said finally. We move at dusk. You show us where Kaelor's influence is strongest. And we strike. Lysera inclined her head, but her eyes flicked to Aelin with something between respect and caution. You are both fortunate, she said. Most who oppose him are broken before they even draw a sword. As the city woke beneath them, the first rays of sunlight catching frost on the towers, a whisper of movement stirred in the shadows of the council chambers. Word of the intruders would spread quickly. Kaelor would learn of Lysera's presence, and Rohan's willingness to ally with her before nightfall. The Iceborn's jaw set hard. Victory was temporary. Allies were fragile. And in the game Kaelor played, one misstep could turn the tide instantly. Yet in that chill morning light, Rohan allowed himself a single thought. He would not be the pawn in Kaelor's design. Not now. Not ever. And somewhere in the northern wilderness, a hidden force waited. Silent, patient, ready to test whether the Iceborn's resolve could withstand the coming storm. The first move had been made. But the board was only beginning to reveal its edges, and the pieces were already shifting. By midday, Frosthaven was awake, but unease clung to every corridor, every courtyard, every hearth. Rumors had traveled faster than Lysera's riders. Strangers at the gates, Kaelor's shadow whispering in unseen ears, and the Iceborn himself consulting with an outsider whose loyalty no one could yet trust. Rohan paced the council chamber, the shard heavy against his chest, a constant reminder of the tether he had yet to sever. Aelin stood at his side, fingers brushing the hilt of her dagger, eyes sharp and alert. Outside, the snow fell steadily, muffling the city, but inside, tension crackled like a living thing. You called a council? Rohan's voice cut through the silence. Then let us hear their concerns, and their cowardice. High Elder Varric, once a steadfast supporter, rose slowly, his hands trembling. Lord Rohan, you wield power that men neither understand nor can tolerate. The shard you carry, the frost that follows your blade, these are not gifts given lightly. They are burdens, ones that could undo all we have built. Rohan's jaw tightened. Burden or not, it saved lives. And it will save more if we act decisively. Kaelor moves against us even now. His allies are not mere rumors, they are reality. And hesitation is death. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some nodded nervously. Others avoided his gaze entirely. Fear and respect warred openly, a testament to the delicate balance he now maintained. Then Lysera stepped forward, her crimson cloak brushing the floor. The council speaks of fear, she said, her voice steady, carrying across the hall. Fear is the tool Kaelor wields against you. If you cannot see beyond it, he has already won. I offer knowledge, Iceborn, not miracles, not empty promises. But knowledge that can break his hold. Varric scowled. And why should we trust you? You are unknown, a stranger arriving at our gates with dire warnings. How do we know this is not Kaelor's ruse? Lysera's silver eyes locked onto his. Because I have walked through Kaelor's fires and emerged alive. I have seen the corners where even he fears to tread. And I have suffered under the chains he would impose on you, on this city, and on the north itself. My loyalty is earned through survival, and I choose to fight him. Rohan's hand brushed the shard. He could feel Kaelor's presence, faint but insistent, probing for cracks in his resolve. Elder Varric, he said evenly, Kaelor has no patience for the council's hesitation. Every hour wasted gives him leverage, strengthens his tether, and deepens the frost in my veins. Do we act as men, or as statues frozen by fear? The chamber remained tense, eyes darting between Rohan and Lysera. Finally, Varric's shoulders sagged, his voice weary. We will hear her. But know this, Iceborn. If this ends in ruin, the council cannot shield you from blame. Nor can the city forgive. Rohan inclined his head. Understood. But know this as well. If Kaelor wins, no council, no city, no elder will remain unscathed. We fight, or we fall, together or alone. Aelin stepped closer, her gaze never leaving Rohan's. We have allies in unexpected places, she whispered. Trust must be measured, but action cannot wait. Lysera speaks truth. Kaelor will not wait. Rohan drew a deep breath, letting the cold air fill his lungs. The shard pulsed against his chest like a second heartbeat, a reminder of the cost, of the danger, of the power he bore. But it also carried potential that Kaelor had yet to anticipate. Lysera unrolled a map across the council table, silver runes tracing lines and nodes. Here, she said, pointing, is where his influence is strongest. These are not mere rumors of soldiers and spies. They are citadels of his magic, nodes feeding his tether. Strike here first, before he can consolidate, and the balance can shift in your favor. Rohan leaned over the map, his mind racing. The strategy was dangerous, but it was their only option. Delay would give Kaelor the advantage. Hesitation would give him the city. And somewhere in the shadows beyond the council chamber, unseen, a figure observed. Kaelor's laughter echoed faintly in Rohan's mind, a cold, relentless reminder. Every step you take, Wolf, I am there. Every ally you trust, I can corrupt. Every plan you forge, I will bend it to my will. Rohan clenched his fists. Then we move before he can twist our hands, he said, voice low but steady. Tonight, the first strike begins. Frosthaven will not bend. The Iceborn will not fall. Outside, snow continued to fall, heavy and relentless. And in the heart of the north, the pieces were set. The storm was coming. Night fell over Frosthaven like a suffocating shroud. The snow had thickened to drifts that swallowed streets and courtyards, leaving only narrow paths where the wind hadn't claimed the city entirely. Lanterns glimmered weakly through the storm, casting long, quivering shadows across frost-crusted stone. Rohan and Aelin moved silently through the streets, their cloaks heavy with ice, the shard pressing faintly against Rohan's chest. Lysera led them, her eyes scanning every corner, every roofline. The enemy knows patience, she murmured. But so do we. Every shadow could be a spy. Every footstep a trap. At the city gates, Rohan paused, hand on the hilt of his sword. I faced armies, monsters, sorcery, he said quietly. But Frosthaven itself feels different tonight. It feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for judgment. Aelin's hand tightened on his arm. Because it is. And so is every citizen. Fear spreads faster than any sword. Kaelor knows that. He spreads it like frost through stone. They entered the first target, an abandoned watchtower on the city's outskirts. Lysera pointed to the runes etched into the stone, faint traces of Kaelor's magic, pulsing with an eerie blue light. These nodes feed his tether, she explained. Break them, and you weaken him. But be careful. Touch the wrong rune, and it will lash out through the shard. Rohan approached the wall, the shard pulsing against his palm as if acknowledging the proximity of another power. He traced the runes with his fingers, careful not to release the shard's energy fully. A sudden crack echoed through the tower, frost spreading along the walls like ink in water. His breath hitched. It reacts, to me. Of course it does, Lysera said sharply. Kaelor built these nodes to bind you, to test the limits of your will. One misstep, and the frost will turn against you. Every spell he casts is not just against your body, it is against your mind, your certainty. A sharp wind howled through the broken tower windows, carrying with it whispers faint as glass scraping stone. Rohan's heart pounded in rhythm with the shard's faint pulse. The cold was not just physical, it was mental, seeping into thoughts, clouding judgment. Aelin placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. Trust your instincts, Rohan. Not the shard, not Lysera, not me. You. Rohan nodded, though his jaw was tight with the effort to control the frost. He focused on the runes, willing the shard to absorb their energy rather than release it outward. Slowly, painstakingly, the glow dimmed. A soft crack echoed as the first node collapsed inward, its magic dispersing like smoke caught in the wind. Before they could catch their breath, the ground trembled. A section of the tower wall shattered, sending snow and debris into the room. Figures emerged from the storm outside, Kaelor's agents, robed and masked, weapons gleaming faintly in the lamplight. Rohan rose, shard in hand, frost creeping along his gauntleted fingers. So it begins, he muttered. Steel met ice in a flash, and the chamber became a tempest of motion. Aelin's blade cut arcs through the attackers, each strike precise, deadly. Lysera moved like a shadow, weaving through the fray, chanting words of power that tore at the enchantments clinging to the tower's stones. Yet even as they fought, the frost whispered, mocking, taunting, reminding Rohan that every victory fed the tether that bound him to Kaelor. One agent lunged toward Rohan, blade raised. The shard flared in response, frost erupting outward to freeze the intruder mid-step. The man's scream echoed through the tower, turning to silence as ice claimed him. But the shard pulsed harder afterward, a sharp tug in his chest, as though Kaelor's presence rippled through it. Lysera's voice cut through the chaos. Enough. The node is ours. Collapse it. Rohan pressed the shard to the wall, concentrating, channeling the shard's energy in harmony with his own will. Frost spiraled, eating through the stones, and with a thunderous crack, the node collapsed entirely, leaving only shattered runes smoldering in the snow. For a moment, silence fell. Even the storm outside seemed to pause. Rohan's chest heaved, shard dim but still warm. Victory had been won, but he knew better than to celebrate. Kaelor would feel this, and Kaelor would respond. Aylin's hand found his again. "You did it," she whispered. "But this is only the beginning. He will strike harder, smarter, and closer." Rohan's eyes, silvered with the frost and the shard's pulse, narrowed. "Then we strike first. Every node we destroy, every agent we cut down, we make him bleed before he can touch Frosthaven's heart." As they left the tower, the storm outside seemed alive, swirling with unnatural currents. And far away, beyond sight or sound, Kaelor's laughter echoed once more. A low, cruel murmur that promised vengeance and a game far more deadly than the Iceborn had yet faced. The war had truly begun. The dawn was a cruel, pale light, glinting off the frost-covered streets of Frosthaven like shards of glass. Rohan rode ahead of Aylin and Lysera, the shard secured at his side, its pulse faint but insistent. The night's battle in the watchtower had left him drained, yet his mind buzzed with the certainty that Kaelor would not remain passive. Every shattered rune, every defeated agent was a message to the sorcerer. Rohan was hunting him. The streets were silent, almost too silent. Shops had their shutters closed, doors barred from the inside. Only the crunch of snow beneath their horses' hooves and the distant cries of gulls over the harbor punctuated the morning air. The people of Frosthaven had begun to understand that their lord carried more than a sword. They sensed a power that was as unnatural as it was necessary. Fear shadowed respect, and it gnawed at every whispered word in the alleys. Lysera dismounted first, gesturing toward the city's council chambers. "The council will convene today. They will argue, they will plot, and many will see weakness where none exists. We must anticipate betrayal, for Kaelor's hand is not limited to the field of battle." Rohan followed, his boots crunching against the icy stones. The shard at his side pulsed again, almost impatiently, as if aware of the danger that awaited inside. "Then we give them no excuse," he said grimly. "If Kaelor cannot touch me directly, he will touch them through their ambition, through their fear." Inside the council chamber, the air was thick with tension. Lords and ladies whispered among themselves, glances darting like hawks searching for prey. Some eyed Rohan with awe, others with suspicion. The High Elder, still cautious after the previous confrontation, motioned for silence. "Lord Rohan," he began, his voice steady despite the storm of murmurs, "the council recognizes your victories. Yet reports of sorcery reach our ears. The people speak of ice that strikes without command, frost that kills without warning. The burden of leadership is not only victory, it is perception, and perception can sway a city faster than the sharpest blade." Aylin stepped forward, her silver eyes flashing. "This is no sorcery of his choosing. It is a tether, a curse wrought by Kaelor, whose ambition knows no bounds. Lord Rohan fights not just for Frosthaven, but against a sorcerer who wishes to unravel it from within." One of the younger counselors, Lord Varen, scoffed. "And yet, each battle you fight with that cursed shard, Iceborn, feeds the power we do not see. Are we safe under the hand of one who draws death with a thought?" Rohan's jaw tightened. "And yet I have kept this city alive when armies of raiders came to burn it, when frost itself threatened to claim every life. If you question my methods, then you question your own survival." Whispers rose again, tension coiling in the room like a serpent. It was then that a messenger arrived, breathless, robes frozen and sodden from the night storm. "My lords, my lady," he gasped. "The northern gate has been attacked. Fires burn, and unknown forces, they bear the mark of Kaelor's magic." The room erupted. Panic flared. Voices shouted over each other. The shard pulsed sharply against Rohan's side, almost screaming. Aylin's hand found his arm instantly. "This is his message," she said quietly. "He tests the council, and he tests you. He wants to see who wavers first." Rohan drew the shard, frost crawling up the blade like liquid silver. "Then we answer him," he said, voice low and lethal. "We do not wait for fear to take root. We strike before it can." Lysera moved to the map laid upon the council table, her fingers tracing routes to the northern gate and surrounding districts. "We can set traps, fortify positions, and deploy patrols," she said. "But Kaelor's agents are cunning. He will not strike where we are ready. He will strike where we are weakest, where doubt spreads fastest." Rohan's eyes met hers, and he nodded. "Then we make no weak points. Every man, every woman, every sentinel must understand that the Iceborn does not hesitate. Hesitation feeds him. Resolve defeats him." The chamber fell silent once more, not from calm, but from the weight of the moment. The shard at Rohan's side pulsed faintly, almost in approval. Outside, the storm began to abate, though the snow still clung stubbornly to rooftops and streets. Yet beneath that calm, an undercurrent of danger stirred. Kaelor's spies, hidden among the council and the populace, had already marked the moments of doubt, the faces of those uncertain, the paths of least resistance. Frosthaven was no longer just a city. It was a battlefield of shadows, of whispered threats, and of unseen power. Rohan turned toward the window, snowflakes catching the dim morning light. "Let them come," he whispered. "For every shadow they cast, I will cast 10 back. Kaelor thinks to break us from afar. But he will find. Frosthaven bleeds only if I allow it." And far to the north, in the icy blackness of Kaelor's tower, the sorcerer's laughter rang out again, cold and patient. "So determined, wolf," he murmured. "Yet the frost he wields is mine, and soon, he will not know where Rohan ends, and Kaelor begins." The die had been cast, and Frosthaven's fate teetered on the edge of frost and fire. The northern gate burned under a cold, merciless dawn. Smoke curled into the sky like black serpents, the scent of charred wood and melting frost stinging the lungs of those who dared approach. Rohan, Aylin, and Lysera rode hard through the streets, their horses' hooves striking sparks against the frozen cobblestones. The shard at Rohan's side pulsed in response to the chaos ahead, its heartbeat quickening as if sensing the presence of Kaelor's malice. The first bodies met them at the gate, guards frozen mid-step, faces twisted in silent screams. The frost here was unnatural, jagged shards protruding from the stone and ground, marking the hand of a sorcerer rather than mere winter. Rohan's stomach tightened. This was no mere raid. Kaelor's power was growing, testing not just him, but the very city he protected. Lysera dismounted first, scanning the perimeter for survivors. "They are not raiders," she said grimly. "This is orchestrated, every strike calculated to maximize terror." Her breath fogged in the cold air, but her eyes remained sharp. "Kaelor's agents are here, and he will have more waiting beyond the walls." Rohan drew the shard fully, frost climbing the blade in a slow, deliberate crawl. "Then we show them what happens when Frosthaven's defenders hesitate." He looked at Aylin. "You know the West Tower's access points?" Aylin nodded, eyes flicking toward the distant black smoke rising from the gate's shattered parapets. "If we flank them from the towers, we can cut off their advance before it spreads further into the city. But it will be a gamble." He did not hesitate. "Then we gamble. For every soldier who falls, Kaelor feeds on fear. If we strike decisively, we starve him." They moved swiftly, taking the towers and clearing rooftops with a mixture of stealth and brute force. Archers loosed icy shafts that seemed to crackle with unnatural frost, falling with precision that bordered on magical. Soldiers and mercenaries alike were caught off guard by the sudden counterattack. Yet still, the frozen dead littered the ground, a grim testament to Kaelor's influence. In the midst of the chaos, a figure emerged from the gate, a man cloaked in shifting shadows, frost curling along his sleeves, eyes glowing faintly blue. He moved with unnatural grace, leaving trails of freezing mist in his wake. The council's soldiers faltered, unsure whether to attack or flee. Rohan's pulse quickened. The shard reacted violently, frost leaping from the blade in anticipation. "There," he hissed. "That is one of Kaelor's lieutenants. Cut him down, and the rest will scatter." Aylin leapt from the parapet, landing in a roll before drawing her own blade. Lysera's arrows hissed through the air, striking with deadly accuracy. The lieutenant's movements were fluid, almost impossible to predict, countering strikes with bursts of icy magic that left scorch marks on the stone. Rohan lunged forward, frost enveloping his blade as it clashed with the lieutenant's staff. Sparks of cold erupted into the air, mingling with snow and smoke. The force of the magic drove Rohan back, his boots skidding across ice-laden stone. But with a roar, he steadied himself, letting the shard guide his movements. Each swing carved a path of frozen destruction, shards lancing toward the enemy in a flurry of silver death. The lieutenant fell to one knee, frost creeping over his skin, but he was not finished. With a sharp incantation, he unleashed a wave of magic that sent Rohan sprawling backward, shards of ice embedding into the stone floor. Pain flared, but he forced himself upright. The shard pulsed fiercely in his palm, feeding off his fury and resolve. Aelin and Lysera regrouped, flanking the lieutenant from both sides. "Now, Rohan!" Lysera shouted, her voice cutting through the roar of battle. With a roar that seemed to shake the very heavens, Rohan channeled the shard's power fully, releasing a surge of frost that swept across the battleground. The lieutenant's cry echoed before it was swallowed in ice. He fell, encased in a jagged tomb, and the remaining attackers fled in terror, scattering into the snowstorm beyond the walls. Rohan dropped to one knee, chest heaving, shard still warm against his side. The northern gate lay in ruin, yet Frosthaven had survived another test. Aelin placed a hand on his shoulder, eyes solemn. "Kaelor grows bolder," she said. "This is no longer a warning. It is a challenge." Rohan's gaze drifted to the horizon, where smoke and frost mingled like a living thing. "Then we answer it," he said quietly. "But this time, we strike not to defend, we strike to end it." Somewhere in the shadows of Kaelor's distant tower, the sorcerer's laughter rang again. Low, patient, and filled with the certainty of a predator who knows the hunt has only just begun. And Frosthaven braced itself, unaware that the battle for its soul had escalated far beyond simple walls or steel. The council chambers were colder than the city streets, though the fire in the hearth roared as if trying to fend off the shadow that had crept into Frosthaven. Rohan entered, still bristling from the battle at the northern gate. His sword, dulled by frost and blood, hung at his side, yet the shard pulsed with a subtle warmth that whispered of power beyond comprehension. High Chancellor Velric rose as he saw Rohan approach, his hands trembling not with age, but with the weight of uncertainty. "Lord Rohan," he said, voice tight. "You fought well, but the cost?" His gaze drifted toward the shattered windows where frost still lingered. "The city itself bears the mark of Kaelor's hand. And the people, they whisper. Fear is growing faster than courage." Rohan did not answer immediately. Instead, he scanned the council, noting the subtle shifts of loyalty and dread on each face. Lord Dareth's jaw was tight, eyes calculating. Lady Arissa's lips pressed into a thin line. Even the younger lords who had once looked to him with awe now regarded him with suspicion. The shard pulsed again, a reminder that his power, necessary, lethal, and feared, was both shield and shackle. "I will not allow Frosthaven to fall because you quiver behind desks," Rohan said finally, voice cutting through the silence. "Kaelor tests me, yes. But he will not test this city while I draw breath. We strike at him now, or we cower forever." Velric's eyes narrowed. "And you would have the council grant you command of all forces? This unilateral action?" Rohan's jaw tightened. "The council's delays are costing lives. Every hesitation feeds him. I do not ask permission, I demand action. Assemble what forces you can. The northern battlements, the river fortresses, the militia of the outer districts. We strike together, or we fall divided." A tense murmur rippled through the chamber. Some lords nodded hesitantly, while others exchanged worried glances. Lady Aris finally stepped forward, her voice sharp as a blade. "And what of the shard you carry? That thing is no ordinary weapon. The people already murmur that it is cursed. Will you wield it openly, knowing that to do so might turn your allies to fear?" Rohan's eyes met hers, cold and unwavering. "I wield it because it is the only tool that can reach Kaelor. Fear is a shadow we must confront. Better to stand together in fear than divided in safety." At that moment, a scribe hurried into the chamber, breath ragged, hands trembling as he held out a parchment. Rohan took it and scanned the message, symbols of frost curling along the edges, the unmistakable signature of Kaelor's agents. The handwriting was jagged, deliberate, meant to unsettle. The wolf gathers. The city bends. But even the strongest heart will shatter beneath the frost. Tonight, your allies will betray you. Your name will rot, your people will doubt, and the fire you trust will betray you. The chamber froze. Aelin's hand found Rohan's arm instinctively. Lysera's fingers brushed the hilt of her dagger. Even Belric's face paled as he read aloud the final line. The fire you trust will betray you. Rohan's lips pressed into a thin line. Then we test the fire before it tests us. Prepare the militia, secure the gates, and double the patrols. Kaelor will not find us unready. And as for betrayal, his gaze swept the council. If any of you falter, I will know. And the shard will remind you why loyalty is not a choice, but survival. A heavy silence followed. The council, though still wary, began to move. Orders were whispered, messengers dispatched, soldiers mustered. The city braced itself, every shadow suspect, every flicker of flame a potential signal of incoming doom. Yet in the shadows beyond the chamber, a hooded figure watched, unseen. One hand traced the edge of a small, rune-etched dagger. A faint smile crossed lips unseen beneath the cowl. The message had been received. The seeds of dissent were sown, and the wolf of Frosthaven would soon face enemies not just in the streets, but within the very walls meant to protect him. Rohan's jaw tightened, shard pulsing in time with his heartbeat. The stakes had grown higher, the council fractured, and Kaelor's hand reached further than ever before. As the doors to the chamber closed behind the last council member, Rohan whispered to himself, voice tight with resolve. Let them come. Frosthaven will not break. Not tonight. Not ever. But far above, Kaelor's laughter drifted across the northern winds. A promise of trials yet to come. Trials that would test the very soul of the Iceborn. Night had fallen over Frosthaven, and the city's lights flickered like fragile stars against the thickening storm. Rohan stood atop the northern battlements, cloak whipped by icy winds, eyes scanning the horizon. The shard pulsed in his hand, dim but insistent, as though aware of the approaching danger. The words of Kaelor echoed again in his mind, each syllable a poisonous reminder. The fire you trust will betray you. Aelin appeared beside him, her silver gaze sharp and unyielding. They've begun moving within the city, she whispered, nodding toward shadows slipping through the streets. I warned you. Kaelor's influence is not only in the frost or in your shard. He has men inside Frosthaven, waiting to strike at the first sign of weakness. Rohan tightened his grip on the sword. Then we do not give him a sign. Every gate, every street, every watchtower must be manned. And the council, they will answer to me if they falter. The winds howled in response, a chorus of impending doom. From the battlements, Rohan could see torches flickering unnaturally in the distance. Figures moved with precision, shadowed by the night. The first wave had come, not raiders, but agents of Kaelor, masked and silent, their movements rehearsed for maximum fear. Rohan leapt from the parapet, landing among the forward guards with the shard illuminating the frost around him. Instantly, the first attacker fell, frozen mid-stride, their cry caught in the crystalline grip of dark frost. Soldiers shouted, rushing forward, yet every strike Rohan made seemed to feed the shard, and the shard fed back into him, a vicious cycle of power he barely controlled. Rohan, Aelin's voice cut through the chaos. She had drawn her daggers, moving with lethal precision beside the Iceborn Lord. Too many of them. There are more than we counted. He glanced around. The northern streets swarmed with shadows, their weapons glinting under the torchlight. Panic threatened to ripple through his men, but Rohan raised his hand, the shard pulsing brighter, casting a cold light over the battlefield. The soldiers froze, awe and fear binding their movements, and then the shard released a pulse of frost. Shadows screamed as the frost erupted, a wave that shattered the attacker's ranks. But the victory was hollow. Through the carnage, a figure emerged atop a nearby rooftop. Kaelor's presence was unmistakable, dark robes flowing, hands glowing with arcane light. His laughter rang out across the city, a sound that made the blood in Rohan's veins feel like ice. You think your shard will protect you? Kaelor called, voice drifting like smoke. Every strike you make feeds me. Every life you save strengthens my chains around your soul. Rohan's jaw tightened. I do not fear you, he shouted back, voice raw. I fear only letting Frosthaven fall because of your cowardice. Kaelor raised his hands, and suddenly, fire leapt from his fingertips, igniting the wooden towers and streets. The city screamed in chaos, citizens fleeing in terror. Rohan's shard flared violently in response, frost lashing against flame, twisting the very elements in a battle of extremes. The frost hardened the fire into black ice, but the effort drained him. The shard's pulse hammered in his chest, each beat threatening to tear him apart from the inside. Amidst the devastation, betrayal revealed itself. Lord Dareth appeared from behind the ranks of soldiers, sword raised, eyes gleaming with ambition rather than loyalty. "The shard belongs to no man," he shouted. "I will claim it." Rohan pivoted, blade flashing, heart hammering. The fight was brutal, the clash of steel ringing in the night. Dareth's strikes were precise, trained, and fueled by desperation. For a moment, Rohan faltered, the shard quivering in his grasp. But Aelin was there, daggers spinning, forcing Dareth back just long enough for Rohan to regain control. "Now, Rohan, the shard," she cried. He focused, every ounce of will and rage and fear channeled into the shard. Frost exploded outward, striking Dareth like a storm. The counselor collapsed, frozen, his ambition encased in a crystal prison. Kaelor's laughter, however, grew louder. "Impressive, Iceborn, but this is only the beginning. Every betrayal you quash? I am already 3 steps ahead." Rohan raised the shard, eyes blazing. "Then we keep moving forward. Frosthaven stands, and I will not yield." Lightning cracked the night sky, illuminating the city in a blinding flash. The pulse of the shard echoed with his heartbeat, the frost spreading further, a signal to the enemy that the Iceborn would fight, unrelenting, and that betrayal would not go unpunished. And in the darkened streets, Kaelor's agents vanished into the shadows, their first wave broken, but the war had only begun. Rohan stood atop the northern battlements, shard glowing faintly, chest-heaving. The council was fractured, the city in flames, yet his resolve burned brighter than ever. Frosthaven would not fall. Not tonight. Not ever. But somewhere beyond the horizon, Kaelor whispered a promise into the winter wind. "The wolf survives tonight, but the ice will claim him yet." The night was far from over.